What's up everybody, welcome to Elevation Dent Company. In today's video, we have a decent sized fender dent that is directly on a body line. Just by glancing at this, we have a lot of built up pressure all in the upper half of this dent. The inside of this dent is pushed in pretty far. We also have some damage here on the lower part of this lip as well. And here's a view of it from the opposite direction. By looking at this from the top view, you can see how far that body line's pushed in. I jacked this car up a little bit. I placed the jack stand underneath the vehicle. I'm gonna get in here and take this inner wheel well liner out. First thing I'm gonna do is grab a clip tool. I'm gonna come in and take all these trim clips out. This thing just slides right up underneath there and it pops out. Now that I have that wheel liner pushed back, I went ahead and shoved a 2x4 in there to keep that back out of my way so that I can get access up underneath this metal. There's several different ways we can approach this dent. We can get in here with a tool with a really blunt tip on it and get in here and start pushing right on that body line. We can get in here with some glue tabs and get in here and pull a lot of that out. My number one go-to method to repair fender dents like this when they're inside of a body line like that and we have access right into the dent is just using a cheap little C-clamp. What I've done here is I've got a couple plates of metal that I've super glued to one end of it. Okay, and I've super glued these a while ago and they've been on there ever since. You can tell I use this thing a ton. Generally on the other end, I do the exact same thing. I have several different size plates for this according to the dent that I'm fixing. Basically, this is gonna slide directly inside this fender. I'm gonna put a plate on the outside of this and the whole goal here is to simply pancake this metal. By doing this, I'm cutting this repair in half. I don't have to get in here with any glue. I don't have to get in here with any tools. If you guys attempt to use something like this and you don't have any metal plates, you can also use some paint sticks. Just break them in half to the size you need. You can glue them up there, tape them up there, or whatever you got to do. But paint sticks work just as good as metal does. On the upper part of this dent, we've got some serious crown built up. Technically, if I was coming in here with a tool, I would get in here and hammer some of this out. For this case, I'm not gonna have to do that because once I put that vise in through there, I'm gonna get some pressure on that and then I'm gonna come in and start tapping on that crown. I've got a larger metal plate here, and on the other side, I've just super glued a piece of leather. All I'm gonna do is I'm gonna shove my vise in through here. I'm gonna put my metal plate down. Now you can see here what I'm working with. I got this metal plate directly on that body line. You can see the gap inside of there. And as I put pressure on this, I'm gonna be looking straight down into that and watch that metal move. Now before I start adding a lot of pressure on this, I need to come in through here and get a lot of heat, especially here on the upper part of this crown. Now I'm gonna come in and start applying pressure on this. Now that I have a really good amount of pressure on this, at this point is when I'm gonna come in here and start tapping that crown down. All I'm gonna use here is a slapper and a rubber mallet. So with having all that pressure on that body line and beating on that crown, you can see how much that metal has moved back in its place. Now I'm gonna apply some more pressure and get some more heat on this. I got a little flat plastic knockdown tip here. I'm gonna go ahead and put this into a knockdown tool. Now I'm gonna use this to come in and lay some of this tighter metal in here flat. All right guys, so as you can see so far, this upper crown is pretty much laid flat. As we look into the dent, this clamp has done its job because you can see that metal is now pancaked. The center of that dent is completely pulled out. I'm gonna keep this clamp on here for now. I'm gonna keep pressure on it. I'm gonna come to the inner fender and I'm gonna go ahead and pop this plastic cover off. So I'm gonna grab an Ultra Dent tool here. This is an interchangeable tip tool. I'm gonna start out here with this little blunt tip. Go ahead and get this screwed in. I'm gonna slide it directly inside that gap. I still have a lot of tension here on this clamp. All I'm gonna do is just get in here and I'm gonna pull all these lows out of the upper part of this fender. Once I get all that out, I'm gonna loosen this clamp up and I'm gonna lower it down to work on this damage below. Now I'm gonna get in here, I'm gonna loosen this clamp up and I'm gonna shift it down into the lower section where we see all this damage in through here. Now that we have that clamp moved down, you can see how much of that metal that clamp moved out. We have very little work in there to do now. Now I'm gonna go ahead and get some pressure here on this bottom half. Now that I have that metal in there pancaked, I got all this pressure here on this vise. I'm gonna come in from the top half with my PDR tool and I'm gonna go ahead and just pull these little lows out. I don't need this blunt tip anymore, so I'm gonna switch this out. Now I'm gonna move on to a more less blunt tip. I'm gonna go directly back inside that fender. All right, I got all the upper half of this worked out. Let's go ahead and back this vise off to see what type of damage we got left up underneath here. So here's what we're left with in through here. Not a whole ton of work. We got some low spots in through here that need to be picked up. There's a slight crease down here in the lower part of this body line. I'm gonna switch up to a more shorter rod here. Still working with the interchangeable tip. What I've done here is just put multiple extensions together to make a really long shaft. I've got a really sharp tip on the end of this, and I'm gonna use this to come in and pick out all these little low spots. So I'm gonna go ahead and screw this on here. I'm gonna come in from the bottom area. I'm gonna rest this tool right here on this tire. I'm gonna do all my prying off that. And with that shaft in there being so long, I barely have to put any pressure on here to move this metal around. So I'm gonna come in here and I'm gonna fine tune all these little low spots and pick all these little areas up. Alright guys, here's the outcome of this fender dent. I'm pretty happy with the way this thing turned out. With being right there on that body line, that vise made some really quick work for this dent. I might end up coming in and doing a little bit of wet sanding on this. And here's a look at the damage without the paintless dent repair light. If you guys haven't tried a vise like this to fix a fender dent, I highly recommend it. In my opinion, this is the fastest way to work a body line dent out on a fender. Because these things work so good, I have several different style of clamps. This right here is just a welding clamp that I cut the end off to shorten it up a little bit. And these do not have to be used for just lower body line dents. You can actually slide this vise all the way up in the upper part of the fender and work a pretty large dent up in this area. I would definitely recommend using a couple different style plates because you can slide up in through here and literally pancake a pretty large dent. That's a wrap on this one, guys. Let me know what you think about this video down in the comments below. If auto body and PDR is your thing, consider subscribing to the channel. Check out some of my other related videos. I'll catch you guys on the next one. Take care.